Hi, my name is Melissa Agnes from Melissa Agnes Crisis Management, and I'm a social media and online crisis management expert. And I'm here today with Whitney Gibson, who is an attorney who specializes in internet defamation law with Voorhees, and Chris Anderson, who is a cyber investigator and owner of the company Cyber Investigation Services. Today we want to talk a little bit about what internet defamation is. So what it is, what it means to your company, and the red flags, what you should look out for, and mistakes that we see often that we don't want you to make. So Whitney, can you maybe start with a definition of, legally what internet defamation is?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. And we get a lot of calls from clients wanting help with things from the internet, and specifically help removing things that are damaging them. So the first thing that I have to usually do mentally and then verbally with them is to run through the analysis of whether, from the legal perspective, the things that they are focused on and worried about meet the elements of defamation, and that helps me get an understanding of what the potential options are for the potential client. So the first thing I look at, is it a factually false statement that has been made about the client? Defamation is not an opinion about the client or an exaggeration or something that people think is a joke about them. We're looking for something that's actually a factually false statement. It has to be published to a third party. And it's a very low threshold there. Published can mean just simply stating a factually false statement to a third party, or it can mean writing something. For example, what we deal primarily with something on the internet. We are also looking at is this something that's likely the fault of the person posting it, that the statement is in fact false. Usually you have to demonstrate that the person was negligent in the posting of the information, and for that I'll look to see, is there some evidence or some material that seems to support what the person is saying, and if there's not, then I think we have a strong claim that the person is negligent when they are making the statement about our client. And then finally, we look at whether there was damage to the client. That's a final element of internet or of defamation, and there are two types of things that we're looking at when evaluating whether there's damage. One is there actual damages to the client? A lot of the jurisdictions do not award monetary compensation just for emotional pain and suffering. So we look at, is there actual monetary damages to the person's business, or have they lost a job, or some type of some other way that their income has been hurt. The other thing that we look for on damages is, there are approximately four categories that most states recognize where the courts will presume that there is damage to the person, and the person bringing the claim does not actually have to demonstrate actual damages in order to have a successful claim. And those categories typically are, if it's something that is being said about your trade or the business that you're involved in, if it's something false that's being said about the trade or business that you're involved in, if it's something that's accusing you falsely of a criminal activity, something that's accusing you falsely of having some sort of disease, or the final category is something that is accusing you of falsely of engaging in some sort of sexual misconduct. If those statements are made about you, then the courts will presume that there is damages. And most of the clients we see, it falls into the category of something that is being said false about their business. And so a lot of times we can presume that there's damages in the situation. So that's the general legal element of defamation. I know, Chris, I worked with Chris on a number of cases, and he's definitely on the front lines with a lot of people who call and explain what is being done to them over the internet and discusses with them the defamation. So maybe, Chris, you could talk a little bit about kind of from your perspective, what you see as the areas of defamation on the internet.
Sure. Yeah, we, as a cyber investigation group, we have a lot of people that reach out directly to us, and you get the panic call of help, my business is under attack, and nobody's calling my business anymore. Can you help? And so, just from a working definition, what you said about is it a statement of fact? And so, I usually give an example of that people seem to understand is, let's say it's a physician. And so you've got a client that goes on and to RateMD or something like that and just berates this physician, but really doesn't cross the line. So this physician was rude, mean, staff yelled at me, saw bugs walking on the wall, etc. Those are probably, I think you would evaluate them, Whitney, as more on the opinion side. However, turn that around and say, you know what, I saw Dr. Smith and he was in the back and he was watering down an injection before he gave it to a patient. Very strong statement of fact that would be extremely harmful, obviously, to a physician. And I think Whitney would probably evaluate that as truly defamatory, truly harmful. And so what I encourage people to do, and invariably people come in with what we call shoebox cases, where it's not just a single review or something. A lot of times we have clients that get attacked on tens or hundreds of websites. And what I have them do is say, okay, go find me the exact sentences where you believe they have stated something that is totally factual or stated as fact, but yet it is totally false. And people seem to grasp that pretty well.
Yeah, for me, one of the most frustrating things is seeing when you have clients that come in and they're being accused of fraud or scam or phony. And a lot of times there's no factual statement there, and it's very difficult to help a client in that situation because it can, a lot of courts have found that without some additional factual statements, that it's just an opinion, and it can be very damaging. And that's where I would go to Melissa with what she does, and try and bring in some sort of online crisis management person to deal with that situation. I mean, Melissa, what if I come to you and say, well, I got somebody who's got let's say 20 different posts out there on various websites, and they're all saying the person's a fraud. In my evaluation, it's opinion. What would you do?
There's a few strategies that should be done in that case. One is really working on the messaging. So what message is it, what message is being put out there right now that people are finding, and what is it the message that you want people to find? So that's one element. And then going with what to do with that message, so how to get it out there. So a lot of times in those situations, companies or individuals, they didn't have much of an online presence to begin with, which is how these negative opinions started just dominating the search engines and dominating their presence online. So when you have zero to little online presence, then you start with, getting your social profiles out there, the most highly ranked, the most Google friendly social profiles that you can have. There's a good dozen to get set up with. That's the first step. You would go with enhancing. If you don't have a website, getting a website out there. If you do have a website, then I would have my SEO team evaluate that website and figure out where is it weak, where can we strengthen its search engine rankings or its search engine optimization, and get your message front and center. So those would be my first starting points. I mean, every situation is different. It depends on the level of the attack and how it's overpowering them on this in the search engines and wherever else it may be. But that's pretty much the first things I would look at and the first place to start.
Yeah, it seems. Go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I've got a question for you, Whitney, that we see all the time. And so there is some where you just have an unhappy customer. And those frequently can be tough to deal with, more in probably Melissa's court at that point. But what we see a ton of is where clients believe that this is a totally fictitious person. No such client existed. So even though maybe they used a screen name of Daffy Duck, but yet nobody received the kind of treatment that they received, or that they can't. They've gone back and they've looked in their records, and this just doesn't even look like a real person. Mm-hmm. And often what we find is that ties back to a competitor or an ex-employee. Mm-hmm. So what do you do in that situation where you've got a negative review or negative material? Maybe it's not quite defamatory, but yet you don't even believe it's a real person that wrote it.
In that situation where somebody is posing a false review, or they're claiming that they're somebody they're not, I actually think you'd have a strong claim that it is defamation. And when you look at statements that are made, you not only look at whether they are factually false in themselves, but are they implying something that is factually false? And in that instance, the person who is making the statement is implying that they are a legitimate customer with a legitimate complaint, or that they are an actual person who's had experience with the company, when in fact they're just a competitor or somebody else that's just posing as someone different than they are. And in that situation, I think you'd have a very strong claim that it's internet defamation. That situation would also a lot of times give rise to other claims, whether it be under the Lanham Act for false advertising or other statutes. So I think you could make out and you actually have a strong internet defamation case in that instance. And I would probably file a claim to identify them. And one of the things I've actually seen, there was a very interesting case that just came out, and this is something that I deal with. I know, Chris, you've dealt with this. And if someone calls in a lot and they say, I've been damaged on the internet. I've got someone just bashing me, and you're like, show me. Show me the actual financial statements. Or, I don't know. I just know I'm losing customers, right? And what the difficulty is actually tying the losses to that thing that's being posted on the internet. And it's saying something false, people are looking at it, but it's actually proving that. And what a court said, it was a case where they found someone had been doing false reviews about a company. And the actual damages the court found was $1. Because the plaintiff couldn't actually prove the damages. They just said it was a nominal amount of $1 because we're going to presume it was damages, that it was about the company. But it awarded punitive damages of $150,000. And what it said is that somebody who's posting as someone they're not clearly knew that they were giving false information. And where you are knowingly stating something false on the internet, that opens yourself up in most jurisdictions to punitive damages. And I thought that was a very good ruling for victims of internet defamation, and particularly the situations you were talking about, Chris.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Go ahead.
Well, no, Chris, if you want to say something, I'll say it after.
Oh, it's actually, I was going to ask you a question, Melissa. Okay. Is on kind of the opposite side is we also see a lot of clients or potential clients come in and they're dealing with a real customer that's upset. And to be honest with you, is what it almost feels like more is the client just needs some good negotiation skills with the potentially unhappy customer, and they could diffuse probably the whole thing, as opposed to bringing in the big bad guys and the Whitneys of the world and all that kind of stuff. Do you get involved in that, and what do you recommend to clients in that kind of situation? In that kind of situation,
it depends on the situation, but the biggest thing that I can tell anybody out there is when it comes to social media, when it comes to the online world and dealing with your audience, your customers, your fans, your followers, all of them, is always to focus on building the relationship with them. So focus on building a real, human, sincere relationship with your market online. It always guides you in the right direction. So that would be the first thing that I would look at. How can you fix this situation? First of all, do they have a valid point to be complaining and to be upset? Second of all, what can you do to fix it for them? Because a lot of times customers or just people who are unhappy with a brand, they go to social media. I mean, I myself do it. If I'm having a problem with TELUS, I go and I tweet them and my problem gets fixed. So consumers, that's what we do. But so those people shouting out negativity, they have a big voice, or they have a big voice. So if we change that situation around and we make them into a happy customer, they still have that same big voice, but now it's in advocacy of your brand. So now you have somebody with a very big voice who's going out there and saying, hey, this brand has awesome customer support. They took care of my issue. They really showed me that they cared about them. So in those types of situations, when possible, that's what I would always look at. Is there a possibility that we can take that route? And as well as in prevention, I mean, every company out there should have a social media crisis and issues management plan. And that should be, typically that's an issue, not a crisis, but it's an issue that can develop into a crisis if you don't deal with it. So you should have an issues plan, you should have a crisis plan. How do you respond? How do you detect the red flags of this type of situation? How do you respond? Who responds? How do you fix it? How do you prevent it from escalating? And if it escalates, then what do you do? Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I love about working with Melissa on the PR side and working with Chris, and I think what you're touching on is the different ways that we come at these problems. And then when I get new cases in, what I've learned is that depending on the case, there is one solution that's usually a better way to approach it. And because it seems to me that we're talking about two different things. And I don't mean to oversimplify it, but a lot of times Chris or myself is using the stick, whether it be a legal case or some kind of cease and desist letter or some kind of court order to try and remove this. And a lot of times what the PR people are saying is, no, I'm going to kind of use the carrot and try and develop a relationship with them, try and become friends with them. And I think that's a very tough judgment call to make in a lot of cases, but it is really one of the most important things for any company or individual to make is how are you going to approach that? And I've hit on this on other shows, but one of the things that I just feel so strongly about is that there's a lot of people out there who are just applying the stick they have or just trying to apply the carrot they have, and they're not coming together in a room and trying to decide what is the best solution for the client for that particular situation. I mean, don't you think, Chris, based on what you're seeing, it's just fascinating the different approaches you can take?
Yeah, it is. And, so even within our own company, we have, we call them different screwdrivers. So depending on what we're seeing is we have a different set of screwdrivers to pick up that quite honestly are very unique compared to really anybody else out there. But with that said there's a lot of times where I need you, Whitney, on board, and because you have an interesting set of hammers that can bring about solutions. And similarly for Melissa is there's just a whole other set of tools. And what's kind of cool with the way that we operate is that you get to bring that whole set of tools to the game. And, and hey, maybe I need a specialized hammer on this one, and I need one of Melissa's special widgets. And that's the best solution, and there you go. And that's a very unique way of handling this kind of stuff, in my personal opinion.
That's true.
I think, Melissa, in talking to you and the more and more I've worked together with you, what I think is so important for these clients is to not just operate barely out on the internet because they're so susceptible to attacks and so susceptible to internet defamation. One of the areas I think you bring a lot of value to our clients is to just basically almost set up more of a fortress for them to kind of help them and not be near susceptible. Because as Chris and I know, if you got nothing good out there, like you said, I mean, you're just going to be dominated by the bad stuff, and it's going to be so much more difficult to recover. So, I'm sure you're working with clients on that a lot, but that's what I just think is very valuable.
That, and as well as having the plan in place. I mean, having that plan in place, it's expensive when you get attacked online. If you find yourself even just in a crisis, things are going virally really negative for you, you're being attacked on every front. It costs a lot of money to hire a crisis manager, for example, to get you through that. Whereas had you invested in a crisis plan, as one example, beforehand, you don't need to hire anybody. You've had the training, you have the policies and the procedures in place, you follow it. It modifies a little bit between case or between scenario, but you're able to handle it on your own and protect your brand. So both of those together. I do have a question, though, for both of you.
Yeah.
For each of you, actually. So what are, in your experiences, the top red flags that indicate internet defamation in your experience, that people, that companies, organizations should be looking out for?
Chris, you can, I guess,
Okay.
if you can start.
Yeah, I'll tackle that. At least as far as the way most of the companies find the information, unfortunately, is usually when one of their clients or potential clients makes them aware of it. And am I answering what you want me to answer, Melissa? Is that really what your question is?
I guess just, what should people be on the lookout for? If, for
Okay.
example, say they're listening to us right now and they're getting scared, oh my God, internet defamation, it's such a huge thing. What should they be looking out for so that they can rest easy at night and know that they're aware to it if it happens?
Okay. Well, from my perspective is they need to monitor their online brand reputation, period.
Yes.
And so unfortunately, and kind of where I was going before is that people find out about this way too late. And so sometimes months have gone by, sometimes even years have gone by. Like I talked to a physician yesterday that he didn't even know this was going on for 2.5 years. And I took a look at what was going on, and I guarantee you he's probably lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of business, if not millions of dollars of business. Mm-hmm. So going out and, if nothing else, Google yourself like a potential client would Google you. Mm-hmm. and see what it says.
Can I add to that quickly?
Yeah, definitely.
Just some tricks to doing that, because that's excellent advice, is one little trick. If you have a Google account, so Google Plus or Gmail, log out from your Google account and Google yourself. So that way, because Google modifies our searches within our own history of searches. So you want to be able to see what other people are seeing of you when they're not connected to you. So just a little side note there.
One of the most frustrating things for me is I get calls every couple of days where somebody has something horrible that's been said about them online. They've tried to do just search engine optimization, or they've just tried to ignore it, and I look up and it's outside the statute of limitations. And in many states it's just a year. In some states it's 2 years, but they're outside the statute of limitations. I just feel terrible because it just really minimizes what I can do to help them. And then the other thing is, a lot of the websites that would have information that would allow you to identify who an anonymous person is posting on there only keep that information for a limited amount of time. So by the time a lot of these companies get around to acting to try and identify who's defaming them, the website doesn't have any information. So I think from all our perspectives, it's just so important to monitor it and act quickly, because you just feel terrible when you can't help them. It's too late.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add to that is, and without trying to sound salesy, is, I interact with so many clients, and it's like you lift 1,000 pounds off their shoulders once I have an initial conversation with them, because many of them, once they have found it, then they've gone through all kinds of gyrations to try to find help and hit brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. And so, if there was two things that would make sleep better at night is make sure you monitor yourself, and then number two is keep one of us or all of us on where you can find us again, and then if you got a problem is now you're connected with people that do this all day every day.
Absolutely. And there's free tools out there. Monitoring doesn't mean that you have to go and spend thousands of dollars a month. There's a bunch of free tools out there that do the job that you would need.
Yeah, well, I've talked to a number of different people to try and monitor stuff for our clients, and I will say, and I'm just saying this in all honesty, what cyber investigations I've found does it in a much more cost-effective way, in a way that's tailored specifically to the client needs, because they'll talk to the client and figure out what exactly it is, and then do the minimum. And a lot of clients, what they do, a lot of monitoring firms come in with these huge proposals, and they want to monitor everything in the world, and they get these big complex reports, when all the client really needs is, where are my trademarked images? I just want a report of them once a month, or I want to report when my products are being sold online, or something about my competitors. And so I don't think there's a whole lot of people that do what Cyber Investigations does in terms of, for a very low cost price, look at it and provide something that's really tailored. And I think we're going to see monitoring go that way, because I know a lot of clients and even attorneys sometimes get frustrated with monitoring firms coming in with these very expensive, huge packages, and most of it's just not necessary.
Yeah, it's true. So we have some other videos about internet defamation and how to protect yourself against them, and we will be releasing more within the next little while. We have another video actually that directly kind of follows this one. If you're interested in learning more about what your options are when it comes to internet defamation, there's a video out there called Internet Defamation, What Are Your Options? So it's another video by the three of us, and it really goes into more detail of what options are available to you, and there's a lot that you may not be aware of. So I definitely recommend checking that video out. There you're going to find links to all of our information as well as other videos that we've done below this video. And if there's, if you ever have any questions or need some help on any of these topics, give one of us a call. We're here to help you. So thanks, Chris and Whitney. It's been a pleasure talking with you guys once again, and we'll be back with more videos.
Thank you very much.
Melissa.